Try to find you and then try to sue everything.
When did you start?
To make it 40%.
I'm in the corporate, and I like had an attorney like draw up literally like depends on the property. The 2-page max, so it's not like super confusing what the seller signed or anything like that. Yeah, so it's like literally like 2 pages.
I know people that have one property.
Yeah, so I have an investment.
And then I know people that have set a limit, say, I want a limit of $500,000 for the
Have an LLC for my husband, real
like
estate,
2 or 3
income,
houses.
interest, with that.
Or they'll have a
Yeah,
limit.
no, like,
Big
nothing,
commercial
we
property.
have a 2-page contract that we use, so like to buy properties and stuff like that.
So, but yeah, if you have a multifamily property,
And your buyers
even though it's
appreciate
just like
it. Buyers and sellers appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely, we're not like, let's say that we did that on a training program, 2-page, we did a training with, yeah, the CPA.
But if you're still on a single family
Can you look up
property,
Northshore Real Estate Investors Association on YouTube?
as long as it's
So
just.
there's everything I did, that's why I said about,
You guys are in a contract or you feel like someone's using or whatever.
You can move your property from.
yeah, that's,
one to another with claim that property. When you get to B2 value, you can move. But if you have a lawsuit coming, the judge is. So what I have is when I bought in December, I bought my first property in Mississippi. And I set up 2 LLCs. And I set up 2 LLCs as owners of property. Because I'm planning on buying those properties and just.
It takes like, they said every area is 10,000 hours of
I wish I could come in so much about it.
40 hours a week.
And it's gonna look like it owns all the properties.
40 hours a week for 5 years.
Someone hits
So
it.
if you start at 19 or 20,
Take out the.
by the time you're 25, even if you only work 20 hours, you're 30, you're going to get real estate is an expert man.
They nailed it, this LLC, one LLC, they're all gonna be. It's like a massive.
Let's go ahead and start winding down, maybe 2 more minutes of commentary on it.
So you gotta treat them separately, post them as sets of books. They're not. For each of them, the LLC, the sole thing, it's easy to think about. It's like, that's where I'm not people. So the money that's in the LLC, owns the property, I'm only keeping enough money in that if the tenant runs out, I can make a note. Everything else.
Everything is.
And then if I need.
Contracts, the mortgage agreements,
Then we try to like break it down into like, well, is it
yeah, it
this
takes me
is
like
our first one,
a
so
long
like,
time because I
as soon as we
reread
have 5 for it, that
Trust really doesn't have any
we're trying to like,
liability.
okay, one's that,
So
like,
I
categories, like this was necessary, and this is,
like,
you know, the one that would be able to keep using, you know, kind of.
Trust
So
really
I'm
doesn't
trying
have
to let that kind of track it.
because trust don't have any liability. So when you own, its name will appear in a public record, but they can't go look at a database and say who's the beneficiary.
And we had the Excel spreadsheet, I'm saying like, I was out with this bucket full of receipts, and it's like, okay, well, shoot, this don't really say on this receipt, like what it is, and it's like, you know, just sometimes it's better.
Name someone a trustee that's not.
All right, let's go ahead and start winding down. We're going to turn around. We're going to go to the next topic called properties. All right. I know we're getting into the fun stuff, you guys. All right, so we're going to talk about properties. We're going to talk about training tenants, having a level of professionalism, building out a level of an experience for your tenants and whatnot. So let's talk about this. When it comes to properties, so many times people get so excited. So I'm going to talk about owning properties, and then flipping. Oh, real quick, if you go on our YouTube page, and if you just look up Northshore Real Estate Investors Association, for the people part, we have the art of a joint venture deal that talks about partnerships. It was a panel of us who shared Then there's a second one. It says everything an investor needs to know about entities, where we had a real estate specific CPA and some real estate attorneys talking on LLCs and entities and such. All right, so properties. Here's gonna be let me talk about buy and hold. So if you're wanting, and look, let me tell you this, business-wise, flipping and wholesaling, I love it. Do it. I'm doing it. I'm never going to give up to a degree. But let me tell you this, wealth has never been created through someone's income. Like their salary, things like that, right? I'm talking wealth. Now, they might be rich, but not wealthy. So a huge part of that's going to come into owning those assets. So it's going to be the owning of real estate, which is going to lead you to wealth. Flipping and wholesaling is great because that helps me build that capital so that I can then buy more properties, right? So a huge distinction there. So when it comes down to owning these properties, there's a few things. Maybe you're house hacking, and you're like, which is when you maybe, let's just say a double, you're living on one side, renting out the other, or you're living in a house and you're renting out some of the bedrooms, whatever that looks like. Maybe for you it looks like saying, hey, I'm the property manager for this, so that because maybe you're struggling because the tenant, when they know that you're the owner, every hour of the night, they're like, feeling like they can come to you and say, hey, I need this, this, and this. Maybe there's some boundaries you need to put in place. So when it comes to tenants, I'm a fan of training tenants. What do you mean by that, Courtney? I'm a fan of training tenants that this is the way it's going to be. Yes, do we have some flexibility? To a degree. We recently just bought a property and we inherited 6 tenants. Do I like inheriting tenants? No. But sometimes the price is worth it to where I say, we're going to inherit tenants on this one. Why don't I like it? Because it's someone else's screening process and it's someone else's management style that they got used to and that they came in through the door through, right? They probably should have never been there in the first place. Actually, I'm not going to say what I want to say. But there's a level there that many times I have been bitten because of inherited tenants. So that's a common mistake that I see is through this level of inherited tenants. So the next thing I want to talk about here is training those tenants. So yes, when we have inherited tenants, we actually have a protocol and a process we go through where we give them a new management letter, knock on the door, and then we're saying, okay, if you want to keep your rent the same, well, we inherited these on a month-to-month basis, on a month-to-month lease. If you want to keep and honor the price, we need to put you on a new lease by this date to honor this price, or, because sometimes they start avoiding you like the plague because they know that they were living underneath, like, Mr. So-and-so who didn't let them do everything, anything. And they know that kind of some law and order is coming into play. You can tell that they can tell. So with that being said, there's some things that we do. So when it comes to training tenants, some of the things I do is I like to build out a level of expectations of business hours. So for example, I don't know about you guys, I'm an early bird, I wake up super early. Sometimes I don't even know what time it is. Good Lord, I don't even know what day it is sometimes. And I'll get, my mind starts thinking, and I'm like, all right, I need to talk to this person. And before I know it, it's like 6 a.m. and I'm texting them. That's not a good business practice, right? And if it's a tenant, what am I training them? I'm training them that outside of business hours, it's okay to have communication, right? What about after hours, 7 o'clock at night? Hey, can you, can you remember to send rent? What am I training them to do? I'm training them that it's okay to correspond outside of business hours. But in reality, you really want to say, hey, business hours are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. If after hours something happens, please only reach out if it's an emergency line. Here is the emergency number. What does it look like for something like that? And part of this is why is this such a big deal? Because one of the number one ways that I see people want to exit being a landlord is because they're like, oh my gosh, get me away from these tenants. I'm so tired of tenants, ruining my life, ruining my vacations. Anyone ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. And Some of you guys are like, nah. I cannot tell you how many properties I've bought from landlords exiting the industry because they let their lives get ruined by tenants. So a major thing is deciding what you want the process to be within the confines of what is legal, within the tenant, landlord laws in the state that you're operating in, as well as the fair housing laws. Okay? And then building out those processes. So again, whenever we inherit tenants, we literally have a checklist of things that we go through. Whenever we have a new tenant, whenever we have a unit available, we have a checklist of like, hey, these are the things that we need to do. We need to put it up on Facebook Marketplace. We need to put a for rent sign in the window. Or, we need to, for every person who responds, they get an application. We need, it's a checklist of things, right? Some of you guys have seen it to where the lack of screening can lead to some headaches, right? They're like, again, I don't want someone else's screening. The reality is like, hey, you should have a process for screening. You should actually spend, the two things that you should spend the most time on is screening the tenant. So this is the background check, this is the credit check, this is calling their previous landlord. And the second thing is going through that lease. So there's two videos I want to point you to on our YouTube channel. One of them is by Mr. Wayne Sanji. He's a property manager. He's been a property manager for 40 plus years, 50 years-ish? 40 to 50 years in the industry. He came and he shared on property management. So if you look up there, it's a property management video from Wayne Sanji. And then the second video is, if any of you have heard of Mr. Leon Johnson, he came. He's a personal mentor of mine. I had him come and share on some tips and tricks for how to have less headaches with tenants. He actually shared recently here. Any of you guys here for that one? It was a good one, right? Mr. Leon, I had the privilege, when I got around him, I spent 12 hours at his house one day and said, hey, you want to come back tomorrow and watch me do a lease up? And I said, I sure the heck do. And I drove back to Wiggins, an hour away from here. And I sat down for over an hour as he went through a lease with a new tenant. And this was a Mima cottage that he had. When I drove around his 50 acres with him on his Gator, his John Deere Gator, he's like, that's one of my rentals, that's one. I'm like, it's like everywhere where the sun touches is like a rental property that he owns. Not major goals, right? But one of them was a Mima cottage, and he was getting ready to rent that to this young guy. He went through 9 pages, whatever his lease is. And so he actually, when there was a really important part of his lease that he wanted to emphasize, he actually had it to where they would stop and everyone would initial. He'd be like, son, do you understand what we're talking about here? Let me be very clear. My background in property management, they would have me go very slowly through the leases as well. If you were quickly going through your leases, what is the expectation of the communication of what is expected going to be? It's going to be low, right? No one really clearly understands what's expected of both parties. So a huge thing is this is where you should be slowing down your roll, understanding what is in your lease, and going through it. Do you have any questions about, hey, we don't allow pets, and if you get one, do you understand that this is going to break your lease and this is something that could affect you? Do you have any questions about this? Or, whatever the thing that you want to emphasize, stopping and going through it. To sit there and watch him go through that entire lease, it was a seminar. To see him go through it, at the end he's like, look, you have any questions? So I'm going to expect this of you. And what's in here, you can expect of me too. You can expect that I'm going to, when things break, I'm going to fix it. Because in there it talks about, I'm telling you that this is in this property is in working condition. If it becomes not in working condition, I will hold up my end of the bargain. And so that is a critical part. How many times have you seen someone say, hey, sign this? And it's like a 5-minute transaction and I don't even know what I signed, things like that, right? You should be the one leading the way. What I personally like to do is I'll either rent an office or I'll ask one of the attorneys that I know if I can use one of their conference rooms or whatever. I get access to a conference room. I'm not trying to sign leases on the hood of my truck or on a kitchen table, because I don't want this to be a casual encounter. So I'm saying, hey, so literally in Mississippi, we got access to a conference room. I said, hey, meet us at this office. And we went through the leases on the lease ups for the inherent tenants. Because we wanted to give that, we wanted to set the frame of the conversation that this is a serious agreement. And if you've got any questions, let us know. We're going to have some serious expectations, and you can have them right back at us, as it applies. So that's something that's really important. And so many times I see people, I can't tell you how many times I buy properties like, yeah, we don't even have any paperwork, any leases with our tenants. And like, how do you go to eviction court? Like, seriously, like, how do you hold up the documentation, right? So this is one of those things where sometimes you get more, I don't want to call it alpha, type A, whatever you want to call it. You'll get some tenants who are like, this is what I've always done, this is what I'm used to, this is what, no. This is what it's going to be like. So there's going to be a level, when it comes to treating the real estate you own as a business, let me say this, if you have a hard time telling people no, or telling people this is the way it is, I'm going to highly recommend you hire property management. One of the very first wholesale deals I ever did, there was a woman who, she was like, hey, I need to sell this property. Market rent was $1,200. She was collecting $800. So first of all, we're already, but even worse than that, she was collecting $400 on the first and $400 on the 15th. Her mortgage was due on the first, right? So like, she's carrying some cost here because it was an old friend of hers that she, from work, that she let stay there, and the guy, he saw the opportunity, he wrote it, right? So there's a level here is, she should have never been the manager, because she's like, I knew I was going to get walked all over. It's just, she was just more docile. You know what I'm talking about? That self-awareness is so critical. Okay? All right, so again, with properties, there's some things to do here. For flippers, I want to say this. Do you have a process that you follow? Or are you a master of wingology when it comes to the project? You're like, oh, we're going to figure it out. I can't tell you how many times, sometimes people, they start painting, and then, they get the flooring guy in there, and then they start painting afterwards, and then all of a sudden they've got paint on the new floors, because they don't have a process, right? Again, you want to find this. And so on the properties part right here is, I want to go ahead and let you guys, so again, you've got the 2 videos on our YouTube channel. And I want to talk about, I'm going to combine properties with processes here, because this is very similar. So on processes, and we're going to start landing the plane here. Can someone tell me what time it is?
7:56.
Okay, thank you. So processes. Guys, I do not get excited when I make money on a project. Don't get me wrong, like I do. But I don't get excited when I make it one time. I get excited when I do it in a way that can be repeated again and again. Because that is where, I think that's the difference between luck and something that I can replicate, something that I can produce again and again and again. Some of you guys heard that I just, I'm recently working through one of my deals where I'll be all in on the purchase price around 35, and I'm waiting for one more quote to come back, but the renovation should be about 100. And that includes a brand new detached garage being built. The property's worth $375. I have significant amount of equity in the deal. It took me 2 years to work through all the title issues. This is the one that had $1.4 million in title work, and it took me forever to work through it all. And so having, what is that? 375, 135, what is that? 245? No, 240. In equity, is that? I'm just leaving. Significant amount of equity, right? Like, oh man, that's so exciting. Yeah, it is. But here's the thing is, I want to be able to do that again and again. I want to be able to say, based on this property, let me go find something that looks like it to go buy again. Like, I'm only as good as how much I can take this one, project and do it again. So when it comes down to it, repeatable systems. I want repeatable systems for repeatable outcomes. So sometimes that's things like me doing a case study on a deal and saying, hey, how can I go find another one that looks like this? For example, what were the main factors to this being a great deal? Was it the condition of the property? It was, those title, this property had been abandoned for 11 years. It's only a 16-year-old house. And so it's like, okay, what are some things that I can say, okay, what can I go look for in another property? One of the things we do in our company is that, and again, we're trying to get better at this, but it's flow charts. All right, you can do this for your rental company, you can do this for your wholesaling company. All right, a lead comes in. What do we do next? We literally have some charts that go from here, you got a box and then you flow into another one. Because here's the thing is, as entrepreneurs, so many times things get stuck in our head. And man, a lot of you guys know that I managed that marina that was owned by an apartment complex corporation. And they brought me in as an assistant manager. Literally day one, I knew as assistant manager from the guy who I took over his job, who I knew personally. He said, Court, it's a little bit tough. The manager is, he's from New York. He's a little rough around the edges. He's got cancer, so you're going to have to help him a little bit extra on days when he's not feeling well. All right. Day one, he goes into ICU and passes away. It was like a baptism by fire on that job. The guy from HR, from corporate, because it was a marina owned by an apartment complex corporation, the HR guy from California was like, well, go look in the drawers, find the paperwork, because literally every training that the apartment complex did not apply, because how do you evict a boat? They're like, I don't know, figure it out. Seriously. So with that being said, one of the biggest things I learned was so many times all of the good information is in here. So sometimes we just need to take it out, because eventually, when we talk about people, when you need someone to come start doing some things for you, how many times you're like, no, let me just do it, because you can't get it out of here to show someone it. So a huge part here is, how can you build a repeatable process for flips? What is the thing that you need to do day one when you buy a property? Are you like, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting something. Did we get insurance? Who got insurance on the property? Who do we need to call? What do we need to do next? Give your life some life back and stop living so stressed out, because maybe some checklist will help some things. Maybe some, things that you need to do what is that checklist when you buy a brand new property? What you need to do? All right, I need to remember to get the keys from the seller. I need to remember to get the, insurance. I need to remember to get my title insurance packet. I need to remember to go change the locks day one. Stuff like that, right? The reason why I see this is because so many times people live in this level where they're just winging it from project to project. And these properties are a masterclass in winging it. Because you're like, hey, look, we're all learning. But here's the thing is, learn on your first property, but as you learn, take some notes, build some checklists, so that on your next one, you can do it a little bit better, right? This is not the fun part, but this is where when I've sat down with people who have wealth, this is what they do right? Let me talk through a few things here. Do you have a predictable product for a client in your flips or your wholesale deals, your rental experience, especially for short-term rental people? Look, get into the hotel, motel. That is such an industry where it's like, what is people's experience that night? They're giving a review, was the mattress just right? Did someone greet me at the front desk? Think about this with your product. If you're truly building a business, think about your flips. Are they something that you're saying, hey, they're coming out? Are we using the same paint on every property? Are we using the same SKU numbers for fixtures and flooring and this and that? Is there a repeatable process that you're able to get out? For your wholesale deals, can you give a pretty repeatable experience for your sellers, but can you also give a pretty repeatable experience for your buyers? Things along those lines. Think about it as a business. Imagine if you were a restaurant. You want to know, Burger King, McDonald's does not have the best burger on the block, But do they have a consistent product? Yeah. People know they can go there for X amount price and they can get the same taste. And it's pretty convenient. They just have this process. That is with Ray Kroc, and then they became the experts at building out that franchise. That's what people buy, right? Look, I'm going to say this. Some people, as entrepreneurs, they need to buy a franchise because they're not good with all the processes. Or they need to hire someone to help them with the processes. Because let's just face it, we all suck at it, right? Not all of us, but I mean, I'm just going to I'm not projecting, I'm talking about myself. We stink at these things, right? So I'm going to ask you this. I think that's really, that predictable product. Here's where some of our frustrations come, is because we don't have a predictable product, right? We have all these inconsistencies with what we're doing with our clients, whether they're a tenant, whether that's, the buyer for the flip or whatever. So my question for you is, where is there a bottleneck in your business and how can you improve? Maybe you're like, you know what? Maybe you have some, people who depend on you, but like, you know what? Because everyone depends on you on a decision on whether it's a deal we want to buy, that's where our bottleneck is. To pull in the trigger on whether to buy a deal or not. Or you've got, the tenants are all bottlenecked because you don't have a good process for, doing maintenance repairs and taking maintenance requests. So the question is that is something that you often want to do, is you want to look at where the bottleneck in your business is and how can you improve. So what I want you to ask is, between the properties and the processes, I want you to go around and say, hey, this is currently where I have a bottleneck. Do you have any suggestions for, is there anything that you've done when it came to collecting rent? Right now, if you're collecting rent by picking up checks or cash from tenants, first of all, I'm gonna be here to say that there's a better way. But hey, what are some things? That's gonna be one of our. That's gonna be our final question. Hey, where do you have bottleneck in your business? And I want you to invite others to kind of give you some tips and tricks. And this is gonna be the thing that we're gonna spend the last little few minutes here. Let's go ahead and take about 10 minutes on that, and then we're gonna start landing the plane.
One thing I wish I had done better. I wish I had done a diary through the process. That way I could go back and reflect it on some of my mistakes.
I have no comment. Marcus.
You actually detailed the appeal process at all? I'm fine.
Those two guys, I want you all to do right now. I find out pretty good. I find out what I can do. Being retired on that, I understand that for you, big part of profit, being ADHD, what you want to do, what are you good? So what I've done is hired somebody that's an ACE student, my biggest and he picks up everything like that. And he got what I suck at. Right.
So is that what you're trying to detail, is like in this step on this, you find a good short term?
I know, like the contract process.
Yeah, kind of a reflection of everything, kind of helped me with timeline as far as everything. We came through another phase, like we have phase, I can go back and just a reference point. I feel like we're in the process, well, maybe I had so many things going on.
Monday.
I couldn't capture it all. Well, I couldn't remember it after it was all said and done, 5 months later down the line. I feel like there was a lot of knowledge that I could have held on to if I had something to reference back to. As opposed to now when I'm relying on my memory, it was just getting worse by the day. So I just wish I'd have done a better job documenting.
We can do just a normal Facebook, like every day, photo album, day one, this is what we did, day two, and I did a really good job of that, but I could,
Not yet.
I think the journal still is good, because I don't know what he's going through. It's like my stuff was like, it's a good reference to be able to go back and look at the pictures
White
from
House
that day and be like,
Kim.
oh yeah, that's what we did, oh yeah, it took us 10 days to do that, it's like a Bottleneck paint, so having that, that's what I think, this would be good, but everybody should have a operations manual or a process manual for sure, I mean, just as a real estate, that's things I have to do to myself, and checklists are very important, so.
That's what stopped me from moving forward to getting a second property, small multi-family. I did the first one, and after like a year, I was like, I don't remember any of the repair costs that I was like, if I go walk into the property and I see things that I know need to repair, I don't remember what the cost for the repairs, the other place.
He's gonna do it. Yeah.
Or like my criteria to buy the property, what I was looking for, and like what my numbers is. I just kind of winged it on the first one, just got lucky, so I didn't really have anything in place for that, so yeah, that's why I took a huge step back and was like, I need to do a lot of education, get some process down, where I started trying to get other stuff.
You made
The first one was one
It was a duplex.
It gets out of hand, so you need good.
And then the single family I had, I didn't really want to buy it right. It was just a family member was selling it for cheap, so I bought it with some money in it. And then after it was been about a year living in it, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna use some of this equity and try to buy another house. And then, yeah, when I started trying to buy another property, I realized that I had no processes in place to try to buy another property. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to take a step back and start educating myself.
It's all easy, huh?
It's not all easy.
I think it's like.
No, not necessarily. I was actually pretty fast with that first year. Like as she was saying, setting up boundaries and stuff, I was with that. But this past year, because I had to pick one lady, so this next year, yeah, I let the realtor get it leased out for me, did all the background screening and all that. And then as far as handling when stuff comes up, I started using this documenting software where they can put in a manual request on there. So I don't know, it's all good and all that. So I'm getting there, and then my leasing up, got that up there. So I'm starting to get some stuff in place. Yeah, the first year.
You can sit there and get big pockets, and if you're not actually going through deals, I don't feel like it soaks in, you know, it doesn't hit home, but we actually go through the deal, learn going through the deal, and shit, so it takes a whole week.
Yeah.
So what I would tell you is to kill it to it's not too late initially.
I guess that was like the education thing I was speaking on is like, I guess it highlighted the gaps that I was missing. Cause I mean, I did do some preliminary like research and education on the paper. Obviously did the things I got in it, but I just started to realize all the holes that I had. Yeah.
It's a big G.
I can answer it or you can see that you have forgotten, but you know, okay, sorry.
Right now, two bedroom condos.
You're gonna pay $6,000.
Before you start.
Well, one of the good things I did was that all the places that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that like the most there was like $1
Like that, so
and
balance each other out.
front unit was renting at 77 cents a square foot, back unit was like 62 cents a square foot. So, yeah, I got in there, I was doing the front half of the bedroom, and then now, the back people, they're really great at having good repairs there. So they say, but yes, one,
There's always gonna be a it's just constantly, you may get,
When I was
really
living
good,
there,
they were paying, you had COVID,
but now
people don't pay their rent, they can't,
they have enough.
and they're using electricity and water, and they won't pay
That
that.
single family that I
You know,
have,
there's all kinds of things, that have to jump hoops to
so
every
they
change.
cover
Well, now,
from the people that
Might be a little bit early. Let's go ahead and start, maybe answering one more person answer.
It's over.
getting to live in that place.
So now, then there's gonna be a
That's what my realtor thinks.
I don't mind a little bit.
The person's right, minus but like you have
All right, you guys, let's go ahead. We're going to wrap things up here. So first of all, tell me this. Was it helpful to talk it out with the people next to you? Did anyone learn something from someone around them that they want to share? Mike?
I wrote down journaling.
Can you speak it just a little bit louder?
I'm sorry. I wrote down journaling, actually, as he was talking about going through some of the different pieces of his project, being able to sit down and kind of reflect back on what he could have actually improved in his process.
Okay, so documenting the journey, that's a great part of it. Absolutely. What about over here? You guys, someone want to share something?
I was gonna say something along the same lines. Gavin told us about how he kept a detailed book about like what he did through his processes and everything, so you can reflect and even show new people that you hire on, like, hey, this is what we've done, try it. If you have any questions, you know, etc.
So that's like a you were talking SOP, so standard operating procedures. It's kind of like an operating manual. Now, if you haven't done your first deal, do you need one of those? No, but here's what I'm talking about is most of you don't want to do one deal and be done, right? And so it's a great thing though, and for some of you guys like myself who've done a few deals, these old dogs, we need to learn some new tricks here, which is get it out of our head and onto some paper, right? What about here? Anyone have something a tip they picked up from someone they want to share? Anything?
It's all very secret.
Very secret. Well, the secret is there's no secret. So with that being said, I'm always going to be, I'm a big fan of giving away books. One of the things I forgot to mention with the properties and processes is that I'm a big fan of having a resource list as a property manager, because hard times are going to fall on tenants for what COVID or not, right? So a resource list to have like local charities, local nonprofits, churches, government agencies. Sometimes they can help with utility bills. Sometimes they can help with like deposit assistance or rental assistance. That's really huge. So LA State Rent, LA is in Louisiana, staterent.com is the Louisiana's government website for rental assistance right now, which is, again, a pretty critical factor. All right, so I'm going to give you some books. I'm going to give away some. I'm a big fan of giving them away. So this one's called the E-Myth. I personally like the Revisited book. Do you like this book? You've read this one?
I haven't, but that's the first one on my list after I get done reading Separate Life.
Yeah, so do you own it?
No, I do not.
All right, buddy. So, so that one's by Michael Gerber. The E-Myth Revisited, that's my preference, the Revisited one. And one of the things that it's actually really helpful is it's in a story format. I'm not trying to spoil it. But it talks about a woman who's baking cakes. And she can't throw her bakery if she's the only one baking the cakes. Is that, because it can get frustrating, right? And I don't even want to talk about the starving baker concept of like, people who are like, all they're doing is like working and feeding other people and then they're just like, they burn out. Burnout is a very real thing in entrepreneurship, right? So we've got to start figuring out ways how do we treat this real estate that we own, or that we're wanting to own, or that we're wanting to buy, how can we treat it as a business? And a lot of times it's really hard, because in real estate it can be so one-off transaction to think, what if this was a restaurant or a bakery that was doing it, multiple times over? All right, so then we've got this one by John Maxwell. This was actually 3 books in one. I cannot throw this one. I will hurt someone if I throw this one. John Maxwell is fantastic on leadership. I will tell you this. If you're like, well, Courtney, I don't have any people on my team, guess who we have to lead then? Ourselves, right? Because we're leading someone, and a lot of times we fail ourselves. So, tell you this. Actually, I saw that you were interacting a lot tonight, so thank you. I suck at giving out the book part, guys. Sometimes I'm just like, someone raise their hand. All right, and then we have this one. It's the Sam Walton, the guy with Walmart, his story. Bob, you can figure out someone to give this to this in your group. See, I'm delegating. Oh, he just gave it to someone. E-Myth is a fantastic book. If you're like, Courtney, this has been a good topic for me. I just need to start getting started. The E-Myth book is actually a really great one. Pretty simple read as well. There are some other books I could recommend, but when it comes to building out the business part, but it doesn't always have to be like higher level. So with that being said, I have some final thoughts, and then I'm gonna let you guys network for the rest of the, for those who need to go, they can go. When people think about mentors, they think about masterminds, they think about coaches. 90% of coaches and mentors are teaching you something that is mindset. The 10% is the technical side. So one of the biggest things I want to impart to you tonight is that whatever you're looking to do in real estate, whether it's to buy your first property or your 100th, or your first multifamily, your first whatever, say, hey, how can I treat this as a business? Because I want to ingrain in you that owning it is not enough, right? Owning real estate. I've had investors that I've had to save from foreclosure because they were like, hey, I got so excited, and they went and bought 3 properties, but then like every single one of them was upside down, or they just didn't buy it right, whatever. The stories I could tell you, right? So again, owning real estate is not enough to build wealth. It's how you manage it. It's how you run it. It's how you protect yourself, right? So with that being said, I want tonight the mindset to be ingrained in you that it's real estate that's run like a business that will pay you well, not just owning real estate. Does that make sense, y'all? So get around people who are improving their businesses and strategically working their way towards better outcomes, more success. Because I'm telling you, these are the conversations they talk about, right? It was helpful to hear from other people in their stories. I tell you, I used to run a lot. I'm working on getting back into it, but like, I've always run further when I had other people I was running with. I don't care. I just don't care. Like, I just always have run further when there was other people next to me. So there's something I want to challenge you. If there's someone you resonated with in your group or someone that you resonated with tonight, I would encourage you to find someone that maybe you say, hey, can we schedule a phone call to talk some more? Or maybe go get coffee, or maybe go get lunch. Because there is a level. How many of you guys were like, man, because I had to talk about it, now it really got me thinking, right? These conversations are huge. They're huge. And so I can tell you this, my businesses have grown whenever I've gotten around people and had to talk about it. So just remember that this is a team sport. So lastly, I want to encourage you to strategically network for the sake of your business improving. Maybe you're like, you know what, I really like what this person's doing. I want to try to get around them, or I want to find, maybe this is, so many times when we network, we say, okay, I'm just going to show up at the event, I'm going to twiddle my thumbs, I'm going to hope that I meet XYZ, or hope that I make this type of connection. Find, even if you come to me and say, Courtney, can you point out this type of person to me? Can you point me towards another wholesaler? Can you point me towards someone who's flipping, or someone who has rentals? Strategically network. Because the reality is these rooms are great to learn in and network, but networking doesn't happen by osmosis, right? You don't just sit in here and be like, I have networked all the networking, right? I have met all the people that I can know. It does take effort, right? And so I'll say this, I'm a huge fan of taking people to lunch. I'm a huge fan of saying, hey, can we jump on a phone call? Can we do something? And you know what, maybe it's one time, or maybe it's once a month, right? That is a level where you can continue to improve your business. And maybe it's a phone call that says, hey, is there anything that, where is your business bottlenecking this month? And it's just a reoccurring phone call to talk about that. Talk about some accountability, right? Like, okay, so let me be raw and authentic myself. I've been telling myself I was going to hire an executive assistant for like, I don't know, Bob, how many months now?
Several months, yeah, 3 months at least.
For a long time, longer than that in the head, right? In my head, I've been saying that, right? I need to say that fully because it sounded wrong. But, so recently some of you guys saw my post. I'm currently hiring a executive personal assistant. We're finishing up the job description to send out to those, but I've needed it for a long time, right? This is where I am continuing to try to get better on my end by knowing where I've needed some things and then taking the action, right? Because a big part of my bottleneck is, I'm sorry if any of you have messaged me. I am now to the point where I think messages now go away. Because if I haven't gotten to them at a certain point, that is my belief. And that's a horrible business method, right? Because there's so many things that are like, spinning. I'm like, okay, let's just not drop the ones that are breakable, right? I'm like, I just hope if I drop something, I can pick it back up, right? So I'm to the point now where I'm like, I can't juggle everything. I'm at capacity. And that was what I needed. That was my next big thing. I also needed to practice getting control of, right? I'm like, this is a good one before we bring in this other position that I need to hire on. So, so first of all, if I'm honest, I'm not sure if I am, I probably am going to suck at hiring to the degree that, because I have staff, right? But it's like, I probably need to find the who. I probably need to find the executive assistant agency. One of my friends who has a company that's a little bit further along, he's like, Courtney, I've been like, I'm 3 messages in trying to get a hold of you, and I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, I'm trying to, and he was like, here is this executive to a company that hires assistants. I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably just need to call the guy, right? So with that being said, there's a level we need to get out of our own way. There was a story, let me finish with this. There was a guy who, there was a very successful guy who built a 7-figure business, and someone came to him saying, hey, I want to buy your company. And he's successful. This is like that monumental moment that a lot of business owners wait for, is when someone's ready to buy their company and it's at a great multiplier and it's all this stuff. And he thought, you know what, I can do it myself. And anyway, for 6 months he goes back and forth negotiating with this guy, because he's so preoccupied with the sale, the value of the revenue for his company is going down, right? Because he's so preoccupied with dealing with the buyer. The buyer falls through and loses interest because of revenue going down. So then he learns, I need to not do that. So then he hires a financial advisor person who sells his business for him for more than he originally negotiated in the first place, because they actually knew what they were doing. And he could stay keeping the revenue up, right? So he learns his lesson, sells his company, has a great payday, and then it's in the middle of the summer, and he's now at home, living in his, the payday, and his AC goes out. This guy's now a multi-millionaire, and his AC goes out, and he's got a construction background. He's like, you know what? It's the summer. This is when ACs are going to be the most expensive. Let me go climb up on my roof and install a box fan to, let us hold it over for a little while, so that in the winter, when no one else is buying ACs, we can get the better deal. Sound like anyone else? Right? While he's up on the roof, he falls down, hits his head, and has to crawl to the front door to knock on the door. And in the hospital, when he's clinging close to life, losing his life, when he eventually comes to, it was a miracle that he, had his memory, he could talk, all those things. And he said, I was doing something that I should have not been doing in the first place, right? The point being is, how many times are we pushing ourselves to places where, whether that's burnout, whether that is, we're just getting in our own way of finding some level of success, because we're not willing to either spend the money on someone, let me tell you this, is there versions of success that I could tap into that I'm not tapping into because I'm holding my own self back? I'm a firm believer I do that to myself. I know that I'm my own worst, when I say an anchor, I mean what's keeping me tied here versus what's propelling me to, maybe where I need to go, right? So with that being said, I think that self-awareness is a really powerful, potent tool, but a lot of times we need those reassessments to say, hey, where could things be better? Because here's the thing is, look, I know for us entrepreneurs, so many of us leave a 40-hour week to go work 100 hours for ourselves, just so we can say we're not working 40 hours for someone else. I get that. But here's the thing is, a lot of us are in real estate because we have a deep why. And if you don't know your why, I'm going to encourage you, there's something called 7 Layers Deep, Levels Deep, 7levelsdeep.com. It's an exercise that you say, hey, why do you want to get investing in real estate? And you'll say, because I want to build wealth. Why do you want to build wealth? Because my parents never afforded us that dream. Why, and when you go 7, it gets deep. Because when the hard days come, you need that strong why. So that's one thing that's really important. But here's the thing is, I have seen people, personally in my family, who they worked very hard with the why being family. But in exchange for those long hours, they exchanged their relationships. So let me say this. The power of businesses is we can buy back our time. We can eventually hire staff who can free up some of our times. So here's the thing is, yes, some of these things are going to cost money, eventually having staff or property management, this or that. But I tell you this, understand that whatever's motivating you to do it, and a lot of times, trust me, money is not a good motivator. It wears out really quickly. It spins quickly. But the reality is that we need something, a driving force that we're going after. But here's the thing is, yes, there's going to be a season where you put your head down and go to work. But what I don't want to do is I don't want my why to become, here's the thing is, I'm not willing to write a blank check to success saying I'll do whatever it takes. There's a level here that we need to build these businesses so that we can actually enjoy the fruit of our labor, right? So that's a huge part of it. And so this is me speaking from experience, because I see so many people who fizzle out because of burnout, because they're doing absolutely everything. And they're doing, they're working 100+ hour weeks. And that's just not sustainable. But what is sustainable? Building repeatable processes that produce repeatable outcomes. And so with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for coming tonight. July 13th is the next one, where Paulie Grange is going to be more of a kind of like someone speaking and Q&A type of thing. Tonight was very interactive. Did you guys enjoy the interactive part? Yes. A little mix up from the normal? Okay. I like throwing these in every now and then. So a few things, July 13th, the next one here. And then if you guys want to go take a look, there's some stuff out there. You guys are welcome to network. I just ask, can you please put your chairs back? But thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you had a great night. Thank you.